Good evening, family and friends, and thank you for coming to another night with Behind Black Business, which is the podcast, the weekly podcast that we have here at Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. Tonight, we have a special guest, Rosita. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Rosita Chatonda, and I'm saying your name correctly?
Chatonda.
Chatonda. Rosita Chatonda. Rosita was actually present at our event that we had this past Saturday. And she has a lot of information for us tonight regarding our teachers and what's going on in our Chicago public schools. Doris is with us tonight.
Good evening,
Doris
everyone.
is one of our board members, and Doris is here to chime in on this conversation.
Yes.
But before we get started, I do want to state that we are a nonprofit organization, and we work very hard to support our Black businesses here in Chicago because we know that our Black businesses have an opportunity to help us circulate dollars, which is a mission here for Repair, Restore, and Grow Black communities. So we feature a Black business on this podcast every Wednesday night. Okay, I can hear, okay, I thought I was hearing something there. Okay, so here at Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities, we have a great affinity towards our bookstores. So this past week, we had an event over in the Avalon Park area in support of the Underground Bookstore, who has been there for over 30 years and serving the community. And we want people to support the Underground Bookstore. And so we had a wonderful affair there on Saturday. We had some, the book joint came and extended their support to this effort. We had a few authors, Jimmy Tillman with his book, Miss Shanta, there was Miss Emily, two women who had some very profound books there. And we had wonderful speakers, Reverend Sampson, Bob Starks, and just many of our participants, even Brother Sekou from the Frontline Bookstore. Many of our participants were able to speak at the event. And it's all about supporting Black communities. It's all about supporting our dollar and having control of our dollar. And we had this event because we wanted to also stress the importance. We also wanted to stress the importance of Black literacy in our community. And it looks like we may have lost our guest. Hopefully she will come back. Miss Rosita. Okay, so once we get our screens set, we have to keep them set because all of this shows up on the podcast. So let's hopefully we keep a good connection here. I do want to say that I appreciate that we had two wonderful bands at our event. David Boykins and his fusion of jazz music, soul music, and hip hop music was very profound. Maggie Brown, who came with her band, Steve Cobb, Miguel de la Cerne, backing her up. They were wonderful. As a matter of fact, on part of our flyer, we said live jazz music with a purpose. And they did have a purpose in helping to support this effort of Black literacy in our community. And I want to thank everyone who participated and everyone who came out. Avalon Park Library, I don't want to forget them, came out. They're located on Stony Island and 83rd, and they came out to let us know what types of programs that they have in their schools. So I mean in their public library. And they do have a lot of affiliation with the schools, and they do offer a lot of programs. And so we need to, as a community, take advantage of that. But most of all, it is important that we read. It is important that we read for knowledge. It is important that we read for information, and that's going to impact what we do and the decisions that we're making as a community. And so Black literacy is very important. It's very important to uplift our children and help them to understand who they are, where they came from, and where they are in the scheme of things. And so that's why this event was so important. We also had 1186 Water, which is a Black owned water distribution. This is a family that actually has an artesian water source in Alabama. It is Black owned and it is Black distributed. And they were present there, and some people bought cases of water, and it's the water is great, very clean, very pure tasting water. And we will actually have that particular business on our podcast next week. So tonight we want to talk about our schools, as we were talking about Black literacy. As one of our petition on one of our public policy pieces on our petition, we are asking that um, our public schools and our libraries will give support to our Black bookstores by giving them contracts. And this is not something that is unusual. It's done in other municipalities. It used to be done in this city, and it's no reason why we can't address that and change that. It is not fair that one or two distributors should be getting all of the contracts for the Chicago Public Schools. So we are definitely concerned and wanting to know about what's happening in our schools. And Rosita she was a teacher in Chicago Public Schools, and she knows all of what happened within our schools and with our Black teachers. We lost a lot of Black teachers in the Chicago Public Schools. And so Rosita is here to tell us and give us information in terms of what happened. And so, Rosita, again, I want to thank you for coming tonight.
Okay. And thank you for having me. I really, and thank you for having me speak on Saturday. The event was very nice. I really enjoyed it. My daughter enjoyed it. And it was just a wonderful event for the community to get involved. I did want to talk about the education crisis. And I want to start a little bit quickly from the beginning and how I got involved. In 2001, shortly after the Amendatory Act, which is a bill that was passed, I think right after Jackie Vaughn passed away, Daley then became mayor, and then he implemented a bill that was supposed to be temporary, where he would take control over the Board of Education. I don't know if people remember that, kind of dating myself. So he took control. Now, Harold Washington always said never mix politics and education. Well, that's exactly what Mayor Daley did. He saw the money coming in with the pensions, and he wanted to use that money. So Daley decided that he would take control of the Board of Education, and I believe, if I'm correct, that's when it split because we remember the Board of Education. Chicago Public Schools was later, and I believe, if I'm correct, this is where the two split and became two entities. Now we know under the Board of Education, in order to be a superintendent, you had to have a license. Well, now we're going to not only split the Board of Education into two entities, we're going to call the person who's in charge the CEO because he can't be a superintendent because he has no superintendent's license. So anyone could be named a CEO. They didn't even have to have a high school diploma. They could just come in and say, I'm the CEO. So that's what happened when Paul Vallis and Arnie Duncan came along. They're non educators, don't have to have any background, but I'm in charge now. So when Daley comes in, he has the Reconstitution and Harper, and then he wanted to kind of close some schools in the black only and get rid of black veterans. Well, at that point, because our union was very strong with Reese, and even though Jackie Vaughn had just passed away, her legacy was still alive. The teachers were different, and they fought. Uh, they ended up with Reconstitution. Daley lost the court, the case, and the unions won. So all those teachers, the Reconstitution veterans, this and that, they were able to go back to work without having to be fired and interview for their jobs and all of that. Move forward. Daley was really mad. So now I'm not going to even let you reapply for your jobs. Who do you think you are? I'm going to fire everybody in the building. You'll never win that case again.
Mhm.
So Daley had ran 2010. And everybody thinks Ren 2010 started in 2005. Well, I have news for you. I don't know if this is what's the pilot program, but in 2001,
That's when
the
it
three
started.
schools, Williams, Dodge, and Terrell closed. I just happened to be working at Williams when they closed. And I knew it was something strange about the way they closed the school because at first they were saying we're going to give the children more, they're going to get better teachers. And we're looking like, well, maybe we're really doing something wrong. But in my spirit, I knew that wasn't right. So when they came in, they came in one day. It was like right before testing, and about 100 people in suits, young black people predominantly, because Daley liked to get young black people to go after the older ones. So they
Hmm.
come in, and we're in our classrooms, and 100 people storm the building, and they're running through the building, and then we get calls to come to the auditorium. Well,
Now
this
hold on one second, Rosita. Who were they?
they were just young black people that had just started working at the board. They were from
Okay.
central office, but they were predominantly young and black. Because that's what he did, using the young against the old. That's the old Willie Litch thing. And so that's what he did. So he had all of these young black people coming in their 20s. And, we were like in our late 30s to 40s. So we just looking around, and they're coming in telling our students, we're gonna get you some good teachers. These teachers are no good. They have failed you, and they were saying this to the kids.
Hmm.
So we, or the children, the student. So of course, they called us down to the auditorium. When they called us down, they told us the school was closing because when they were calling us now, fast back up a little bit, because for 3 years before that, NTA was the brand new school, the one they were talking about on 22nd Street.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was being built. And when we came back one summer, they had refurbished our entire basement. So the entire staff that was playing in NTA was in the basement of Williams School for 2 years. They were working 8 hours a day with no students, and they were playing in NTA. Okay. When NTA finally got ready, a couple of years they've been down there primarily, just having a good old time. And NTA opened, so that's when they said they would come in. So they came in. I peep out the window, and I'm thinking, this is the year of 911 now, World Trade Tower. And I'm thinking, what is really going on? There are prison buses outside of our school, and not paddy wagons. So I'm on the third floor, and I'm saying, I wonder what is happening. Is there some kind of bomb threat? What is really going on? And the funny thing was that, how the old people say, listen to yourself talk. I'm in the classroom about 10 minutes or 15 minutes before all this takes place. And I'm telling the students, I have to get ready for the test. I had a fifth and sixth grade gifted class. And I said, you all need to settle down. We've really got to do our best. They could come in here and close the school down. Well, they were there in 15 minutes. So my students were like, I said, I was in the spirit realm. I don't know where I got that from, but it came out of my mouth. And my students were like, our teacher said, I didn't mean it. It was just a phrase. But they were there in 15 minutes. So when I looked out the window, I said, what is really going on? And so Williams, they would the I learned that the prison buses were for us in case we got out of control. They were going to take us
Mm.
to jail if we protested. I had just done the Montgomery bus boycott with my students, so we were protesting. We had our protest signs and everything, and I have in the newspaper articles of them standing there like, heck no, we won't go. So Daly had also taken a pension holiday, which the pension holiday was, I'm not going to pay into your pension for 20 years. So he refused. So now you have no pension for the retirees because Daly took a pension holiday for 20 years. And now you have these schools closing. So all of these Black teachers are being targeted in the inner city. Now, in order to make that happen, the union had to participate. So Debbie Lynch went to Springfield and she gave up supernumerary system wide seniority. What did that do? It made it possible for Delhi to close the school. Why? Because if I close the school on the south side, well, they're just going to go run on the north side or somewhere where there are teachers that I want them to have the job. So I don't want these Black people to have the job over here. I'm going to close the school, but I need to make sure that they can't move anywhere. So that's what giving up system wide seniority. It opened up the door for Delhi to close 100 schools. Teachers would not be able to bump anybody in the system. They would be stuck in their school. Fast forward, Marilyn Stewart comes. And Marilyn got a bad rap, I have to say, because she didn't speak up. Marilyn actually tried to make it better. She gave teachers tenure after 3, 4 years. You remember when the principal would be in the building? I was working at a school when I first started, and none of the Black teachers had tenure. All the young white teachers, and of course, it was a mulatto principal that just despised Black people. But she would always get the younger white ones would get pension, would get tenure, and the Black teachers would be there working 20 years and they couldn't get tenure. So when Maryland came, it was like, okay, we're going to make sure that all of our teachers get tenure. That's to take care of the fact that they just lost some wide seniority. Why? Because tenured teachers would go into the reassignment pool. That means if you close a school and I have tenure, You're going to pay me my full salary for the first year. The second year, you're going to make me a cadre. The third year, I'm still going to be in there. I'm going to be a sub, and I will not lose my job for 3 years. And you're going to still pay me while I either sit at home, sub or something, but I'm going to still be on the payroll. I'm going to be in the system. That is what the reassignment did. Now, those teachers, the first ones, they went into the pool and they kind of liked it. Okay, you close my school to give me a year off. I get paid. I'm not upset. But then it began, the more schools that closed, the less places you could go find work. Because now, first you got 3 schools, then you got 10, then you have 20, then 30, then up to 100. So 100 schools closed. Now, this is the problem. Now we need to go back to the union. That's where the caucus core and Karen Lewis come in after they defeat Maryland. Because Maryland got defeated because under Maryland, 4,500 Black teachers lost their jobs, but that was due to the fact that Debbie Lynch gave up system-wide seniority. That's where that 4,500 came from. It wasn't really, I mean, they were fired under Maryland, but it was because we had no system-wide seniority. Now we have to do something else. We've got to get the union to go back to Springfield this time and get rid of seniority rights again. So there was legislation, and we were actually, I was a Southeast coordinator or Southside coordinator for Chicago Teachers Union. I actually was a Southside regional coordinator. So there's a bill coming, and it's a union busting bill. And they want the teachers to work 2 extra days, 2 extra hours a day with no pay. They want to give up the rights for due process. So if the principal says she doesn't like you, you don't get any due process. She just clicks you off after 2 years. No hearings, no nothing. They wanted to get the most important. They had this horrible evaluation tool, the Reach, that wasn't meant. Charlotte Danielson wasn't meant to be an evaluation tool, but they used it so they could get rid of teachers through that evaluation. Now, we got to get up seniority and economic layoffs. Now, here's the thing. When I give up the teacher seniority whenever there's an economic layoff, well, when I want to purge teachers, all I have to say, no more reassignment pool teachers. You're going straight to the unemployment line if you have no seniority when there's an economic layoff. That is why 9,000 African American teachers were fired under Karen Lewis and Core. Because
9,000? It was 9,000?
9,000 under, when Karen came in, Black teacher population was about 30%. Now it's about 19.
19%.
Let me just show you the demographics and the shrinking. In the late 90s, Black teachers were,
45%.
it's debatable, but some people say the union was 40,000 starting at between 36 and 40. So let's just go with 38. You have a 38,000 member union, but 5% of the members are African American.
That's right. They sure were.
So now we're talking about, let's do the math here. You're talking about 19,000, and then we take away 5% of that. So we're covering around 17 to 18,000 Black teachers in the system in the late 90s. Now the union has shrank because of the proliferation of charter schools. Now what has happened as the charter schools get small or come in and take away the staff and the teachers and the student, the union is shrinking. But white teachers are still 50%.
Still here.
Now today, there are not 18,000, 17,000. There are between 19 and 20,000 Black teachers. I mean, 9 percentage wise. There are 4,000 today about 19% or 20%. So from that huge number of 18,000, we're down to 4,000. Now, Black educators are the only demographic impacted by a percentage wise. White teachers are still 50% of the union, even though the union has shrank. All the other minorities have grown, especially Hispanics, by leaps and bounds. And every job that Black teachers have lost, the other minorities have picked it up. So the Hispanics are now more teachers than Black. They have like 24, 25, when they used to be about 6 or 7%. So all of our loss has gone to the Hispanic community, the other minorities, and the Black teacher is the only teacher that has been purged out of the system.
Well,
And
Rosita, what is the correlation between that percentage of teachers and the students that
dude,
are left?
I'm
Because
so
you
glad.
hear all of this about everybody's leaving Chicago, and they don't have Rahm Emanuel, they don't have seats,
Yeah.
and all of that. So what is
When
that looking
yes,
like?
when I was at Williams, I kind of watched because I didn't know what was going on. So every
Mm-hmm.
year I watched the drop, and I said, "There's a pattern here."
Yeah.
There are about 1.7 to 1.9% of teachers losing their jobs every year, but there's also 1.7 to 1.9% of the students who are losing. So it was like so nicely put together. I said, wow, every year we're losing 1.7 to 1.9% of our Black students as well. It almost seems impossible statistically for me to say to anyone that all of a sudden we're losing 1.7 to 1.9% of our teachers, but we also losing 1 point. It's almost as if it was planned. Okay. So we are losing our students as well. They are going to chartered schools, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Mm-hmm.
here's what happened. Now let's fast forward back to the you have no seniority and economic layout. So the teachers go on this big strike, and they're thinking that they're fighting for their rights. And I'm going to say this because I was in the room when the strike was planned. I was sitting there, and I knew I made flyers. And I went to the House of Delegates and I said, teachers, when you come off this strike, it's going to be like the air, when Reagan fired the air controllers. You all are all going to be fired on the south and west side. They said, Rosita, you don't know what you're talking about. I said, yes, I do. I read that bill. I read the bill. And you
Mm-hmm.
have no seniority rights. I didn't know how Ron was going to do it, but I knew it was going to happen. When I looked at the bill, I was in the office with Mr. Henry English, and we both looked, and he said, oh my God. And I said, I know. I said, they're getting ready to be fired. After the strike, a couple of weeks later, what did Ron do? He closed 50 schools on the south and west side. That is how he fired it. And you know why he was able to do that? Because they had no seniority
No
in
seniority.
economic layouts. Now let's look. The first 100 schools closed for low scores, right? The second 50 calls for underutilization. We don't have any people in the building, and that is an economic layout. So the second 50 schools that closed for an economic layout. And what happens when you have no seniority in economic layouts, people? You go straight to the unemployment line. You don't go in the teacher pool, you go straight to the unemployment line. So that is why we had that huge purge of Black teachers out the door because they didn't have any seniority right. Now, when Debbie Lynch did that, the teachers were more astute and they punished her for that. They did not they did not elect her again. They did not do that with Karen. They stuck by Karen, and we lost all of our basically Black teachers as a result.
And Debbie was the one who was fighting for the seniority more so than Karen.
Yeah, Yeah, Debbie, one mistake they both made was they were told, I was in the meetings, never to meet with Daly alone. I don't know what happened, what he told them, but after that meeting, both of them were scared.
Mm.
I don't know what he said to them, but
And
they did not fight anymore.
what and then Rosita, after that, that's when they changed the budget and gave the budget to the principals.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
then the principals with the older teachers, because of their seniority, they made a lot more. And so
Right.
in many instances, with the budget that the principals had, they could not hire those teachers who had a lot of seniority. And that
Exactly.
hurt those teachers as well.
Yeah, it certainly did. That was part of it. The principal has their own budget. And my principal used to tell me, you make almost as much as I do.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
can't
Mm-hmm.
afford. And so what does she have to do? Either I have to leave or she's got to bring me up on some kind of charge. She got to get you out the building because she can't afford you. She can get two
Mm-hmm.
young teachers for the price of
But
you.
that's right. That's right. And
And so
And
it doesn't matter. And look at what they're doing now. You can
mhm.
be a teacher without a college degree now.
you
And
So
have you
why?
have a very large pool of subs
yeah, you do.
in the
Yeah.
schools now. Teaching
Right.
regular ed and special education.
Mhm.
And
And,
you
but they're not going to be selective enrollment school.
no, they're not. And Rosita,
Uh-huh.
that when we go back, you mentioned Harold said, and he did. Mayor Washington said you never want a mayor to take over the schools. That is when Daley went downstate and got the legislature to
Mm-hmm.
change the law.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I
That
blame
was the
black
Amendatory
elected
Act.
officials. Black elected officials did nothing to stop this. They knew this was all planned going back to 2001. It was planned. And
And,
all
and,
mommy
and
Ruth,
let's
go
And
ahead.
let's remember who was in charge, who was head of the education when this all happened. Because I remember when they got rid of the FTBs, and I
That's right.
remember when Reverend Meeks was on. And we know that the FTBs, some of them, they were had very good classroom management. The problem
Absolutely.
was they had difficulty testing. So I remember when Reverend Meeks, remember when he was saying that the
Absolutely.
FTBs teachers couldn't pass the test and they were given tests and they shouldn't be able to do that. And then the board said everybody had to pass the test. But look, fast forward when the young white kids couldn't pass the
They
test
didn't have to.
because they
That's right.
changed it and made it too hard for everybody, they got rid of it. They
Well,
said
you
they're not
know,
going to do it.
I came into the system in 1975, and
Mhm.
that's how I started off as an FTB. And
Exactly.
it was up to the principal, if you stayed there a year, 2 years, it was up to him to make you an assigned teacher. So
Right.
that's how a lot of teachers got started. It didn't have anything to do with the test.
Right.
That's just what was set up at that time.
It was set up, and Reverend Meeks, our
Sure
wonderful
did.
Reverend Meeks,
Mm-hmm.
was responsible for
Mm-hmm.
purging those FTBs out the system to the point where they don't exist. And even see, we have to look at our own people, like she was saying, like
Yep.
Doris was saying,
Yep.
when they're in positions of power,
They do
they
nothing.
don't feel that it's their responsibility to protect the community.
No, not at
Now,
all.
of those legislators, when Karen went to Springfield, she was lured down. Now I'm just going to call the names Kimberly Lightfoot,
Mm-hmm.
lured them to Springfield. And I know that because I was in Springfield. I had gone to visit a legislator and we were working at the union and nobody could find Karen. Karen was, we got there early in the morning, me and this other white teacher from the displaced teacher group, and Karen was walking through the rotunda at the at the state. And we looked at each other And we were like, what in the world is going on? Well, our legislators had lured her there, and that is where she agreed to, and then got on TV the next day and said it was the best thing that ever happened.
Yep,
They
she sure
agreed
did.
to all of that union bus and stuff. Monique Davis told her at Push, she said, that was a union busting bill, Karen. I'm an educator, and I will never put my name on that bill. I would never sign away because I know what that bill is. It's a
She sure
union.
did.
Monique Davis was the only
She
legislator that
sure was. She was the only one that would speak
the
up.
only one.
And
And
then
so,
you look at, but you look at, it was all by design, because only Chicago now is set up where you can be a CEO and no education. No other school district in the state except for Chicago. And then they come in with the charter schools and all that mess under Rahm Emanuel. All of this was by design, and black elected officials said nothing. Nothing.
and
That's why
I'm
we're where we
glad
are
you
today.
brought that up about only Chicago, because when Senate Bill 7 was passed, it only related to District
Chicago.
299 Chicago
Mhm,
Public Schools,
mhm.
because they said it had all districts with 500,000 students or so or more. What this would be, this would affect them.
Right,
Anyone with less. So no other district was impacted by Senate Bill 7. They did not lose their seniority rights. They did not get the longer school day with no pay.
right, right.
They did. It was only District 299 Chicago Public Schools that got that
Mhm,
happened to. And
mhm.
if we look at, so Rhyme has closed 50 schools on the south and west side, additional 13, because there are 163 schools closed. But you notice the public only talks about the
They don't tell us that.
yeah, the public. But see, the union was very good in marketing. They wanted to take Rahm Emanuel's job based upon that because they wanted to run the city. So, as they still do. The union changed its focus from service to members in 2010 to political and community organized. So they began to hire people that were going to be community organizers, going to galvanize the community around education issues, but they weren't going to give any service to the teachers
That's right.
who are
That's
paying their salary.
and
So this is what you have now.
if you look countrywide,
Mhm.
countrywide, in these predominantly black cities and school districts, that's where you have all these charter schools. And the statistics show that the charter schools don't do any better than the public schools when it comes to the tests. There's
Exactly. In
in
fact,
fact,
they do worse.
public schools do better. Yeah.
Yeah, they do worse. And what you said, there are no charter schools in affluent or in white
Oak
communities.
Brook.
The selective enrollment schools are all public
That's
schools.
right.
So if the
That's right.
charters are so fantastic, why aren't they in affluent white community?
Because they
Why
won't
are
allow
they
them to come
only
there.
in poor black communities?
Because
Because
we're the
it's
only
education
community.
on the cheap.
We're the only community that will allow anything to come in. They're not in Oak Park, they're not in Evanston, and they're definitely not on the North Shore.
Oh no, no,
Oh
they're
no.
not, because they
They're not going to
understand
allow
what we all know. You're gonna get your best education at a great public school.
it.
And these charters, look at, there's no continuity. You go in one, they have one thing they doing, the other one's doing something else. There's no continuity. So when they graduate, like if we graduate from Chicago public schools, I graduated from Catholic school. But if we graduate from, there's something in common that we all have. We can relate. Even if I graduate from Catholic school, there's some elements that we all understand. These people have a charter school over here doing something. Somebody over there is doing something else.
No
It's like
continuity.
there's no continuity with curriculum. There's no kind. It's just like hodgepodge nonsense, really.
Well,
And so,
Rosita, they started that when they came up with the selective enrollment schools,
yeah,
when they came up with those schools that had a certain focus, whether it was a science school or it was an
mhm,
art school, all
right.
these different focuses. And, I went through Chicago public schools
Mm,
and we had a good curriculum when I went through Chicago public
Mm-hmm.
schools.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came into the Chicago public schools, as to work, that's when I started to notice that they were starting to mess with that curriculum. And
Mm-hmm.
those principals were taking large portions of the budget
Mm-hmm.
and paying these companies, I don't know who these people were, for a math program or for a
Mm-hmm.
reading program. And I wasn't in the classroom, but I saw them take the teachers into the auditorium and give them an in-service on it, and they began to take power away from the teachers to teach the
exactly.
children, you know
And then,
and they were using large sums of the budget to do that. So there was, I do believe that this was orchestrated.
Oh, it was
oh yeah,
definitely orchestrated, definitely. You know,
yeah,
this
oh,
really,
they plan 50 years in
yeah,
advance
yeah.
while
But
we're
Hmm.
still trying to figure out what they're getting ready to do.
when
Uh,
I first go on, I'm
uh-huh.
sorry. Go on. Go ahead, Rosie. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying they do their planning. Go ahead. And 50 years in advance, this
Mm-hmm.
stuff was done, it's coming, and we don't. And number one, I remember what's really frustrating. When this all happened, I thought, look, I gotta go tell our community what's happening so we can organize around it. I go to the community, like I went to WVON, and even Perry and other people, they were saying to me, oh, you just mad with Karen. That was like 10 some
Mm-hmm.
years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When I
Yep.
was trying to say, this is, look at what's going on. Oh, you just disgruntled. They said I was disgruntled. And it wasn't
You should have
until,
been. You should.
yeah, yeah, I should have been. It wasn't until 12 years later but see, a friend of mine said, now they want to believe what you say, Rosita. Everybody's been fired. People have died. The teachers have lost their home. I know at least 10 people, teachers I
Say it.
know, that
Say it.
died as a result of this. People lost their homes. I had to bring my youngest son home from college. People had to bring their children home. They became homeless. And then eventually, after so many years, and let's talk about cause, that's why I formed cause. Because when this was happening, I went to the union and said, why are they firing all these black teachers? And they said, that's not happening. That's only happening to you. And I'm like, no, I'm sitting here with the people right now that they're doing it. So I've said, we met at Push for like 5 or 6 years because I wanted teachers to have support. So I started Cause as a support group. And we would meet at Push and we would just lean on each other's shoulder. We weren't a caucus of the union, but we just wanted to help each other. And then we started strategizing. We started helping people get through the pool. We started helping people when they came on to um like teachers would come in, like Pam, Pam, and 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 we would
Hmm.
counsel her and say, Pam, this is what you need to do to stay into the pool until you can get your retirement. So we have about 6 or 7 teachers that were able to retire with a full benefit because they were coming to cause and we were helping them do that. Then we had other teachers that we just helped find housing. We were just trying to get together because the union had kicked us up. And they were like, get out of here. You don't have any dues money anymore. Goodbye. And so when we started to go to EEOC and complain, EEOC said, they told the officer, Miss Walker at EEOC, they said, I don't care what those black teachers are talking about. If they don't like what they're doing, telling them to sue us. And we know they don't have any money to sue us. They're broke, they're poor, and we just took their job. And they laughed and hung the phone up. And they were right. Most of the teachers were broke. They didn't have money. Uh,
And you
they,
see,
they were
and you
poor.
see what they did. They brought, they brought that whole corporate model into the schools.
They,
They got rid of. I remember when I first started, they got rid of the truant officers.
mm,
Nobody ever thought they would do that. That was not beneficial for the children because that was
right,
your connection with the home.
right.
The truant officer would go to the house and speak with the parent about what was going on with that child at school. And then when they got rid of the speech assistants,
Mm-hmm.
now many of the speech assistants had been there for 30 plus years, and that was a program that was needed because there was always a shortage of speech pathologists.
But
And
and
so they
notice,
started to tell them, they gave them far fair warning that they were going to be closing that program. And so some people had to go back to school. Some of them got teachers, teaching certificates because they
mhm,
felt like if they were a teacher, then they were in a safer position. And it
yeah,
was still, I would say,
a more
majority
abusive one, but a
black
safer
black
one.
employees that was being affected by this.
But
Mhm.
Rosita,
Well,
wasn't there a lawsuit passed though? Didn't wasn't there a lawsuit filed, Rosita? I thought the teachers did end up filing a lawsuit.
yeah, let me tell you what happened. I mean, so in order, so this huge number of teachers, I was actually working with those teachers in the lawsuit in 20. So let's see what happened. There was a lawsuit, and see, the union just wants to say they won. Now, are the teachers going to get anything? Probably not. The unions want to win so they can say we won that lawsuit. So this is what happened. The first lawsuit that was filed on behalf of the teachers, the coaches that I was working with, we were in court, and there was a black judge named Judge Coar, Coar. You can look it up. I have the transcript. And when we went to court, the lawyer now, the same lawyer that had this other lawsuit where the teachers got screwed, she went to court and she approached the judge. And he said, her name was Robin Potter. So he looked at her. He said, did you ask for? He's looking at the court files. And I guess he said, like, they're going to win this case, right? Did you ask for the teacher's jobs back? And he's looking down at the paper. And she says, no. And he looked and he said, you didn't ask for the teacher's jobs back? And she says, no. And he said, shut your mouth up and sit down. Just like that. Now we're in court like, what's really going on? So she goes and she starts shaking her head like back and forth as she's walking away. And he said, let me explain this to you. Shake your head one more time. This is a federal court, and I will find you in contempt. We were like, whoa, what's really happening? Let me tell you what was happening. He knew it was some BS. I want to give these teachers their jobs back. What kind of mess are you on? Because when he asked her, he said, why did you file this lawsuit? And she said, to preserve future tenure. And that's when he said, shut your mouth up and sit down. And we didn't know what that meant. That meant, stop playing games with me. You got to win. You won this lawsuit. Why aren't you asking for the teachers' jobs back? Why? Because that's what I want to do. As a black judge, as a black man, I want to give these teachers their jobs back. But you, as their attorney, didn't even ask for them. Okay.
That's why you get
So
upset.
we go back, and I got to go tell these teachers. I said, oh, we won. Can't wait till I go. And they said, oh, no, it's not that kind of win. So I said, well, what kind of win is it? It's the kind of win where I get to put it in the newspaper that I did something. Okay? So that's what happened with that lawsuit. The
So that's why he got upset because she didn't ask for the teacher's job back. And that's why the judge got pissed off. And
That's
he
why
should
he was upset.
he should
And
have.
we were confused because at that point we really thought they were in our corner. And it was confusing to what is really going on. He could look, he's a judge, he can spot BS, legal BS, and that's basically what. Now let's fast forward to the lawsuit that they just found. The same attorney, she goes in and she files a lawsuit on so-called behalf of the union. She doesn't file it under the union. Because when you file the lawsuit under the union, like, if you're going to file a lawsuit for teachers and they put filing under the union, you don't get a cut. All the money goes to the teachers. The lawsuit was 9.5 million. So, and it's not a whole lot for over almost 500 people, but the teachers would have gotten the entire amount filed under the union. Because her son, who's now vice president, was chief of staff then, and now he's the vice president, she filed, she went to the teachers and said, the union is not going to help you. Why not? You're the union attorney. Why aren't you filing under the union? You already paid to file these lawsuits. You worked for the union at one point. The union has paid you millions. Why aren't you filing? Because if I file this class action under my law firm, I get to take at least 40% of the winnings. So that's what happened. Over 4 million went to her law firm,
Oh
and the
my God.
500 teachers ended up. Now think about this: the minimum they're going to get is about 5,000, maybe maximum, maybe a little over 10, within that range. They waited for this for over 10 years.
Oh my
They went
God.
to 2012 to 2014. And it's only a small group in that class, just those 2 years now. So if you were in those 2 years and you got laid off, you may get whoop-de-doo $5,000 over after you waited all the time. She gets 4 million, but you're gonna get 5,000.
So
And that's a
Rosita,
win-win. And one of the things I said about that, we just have to, these people are exploiting us. These people come to this country, they become lawyers, they're first and second generation immigrants, and they're coming in here and they're exploiting our pain, they're exploiting our suffering, and they're getting rich off of it. They're exploiting us and exploiting everything that we have endured. It should be illegal for them to file anything on our behalf because you said it, Doris. This is happening all over the country. Chicago is ground zero. There are 7,000 out in New Orleans, and Arnie Duncan had the audacity to
yeah.
say that Katrina was the best thing that could happen because he wanted to, like that water washed out every school in New Orleans. He wanted to wash out every school in every black school district all over this country.
And
And that's
Val is
what they
So
and Val is
So Rosita, we're getting to the top of the hour, and I do want you to have an opportunity to talk about your organization cause and what you're trying to do about this, because I
okay.
mean
We
you laid
oh
it
yeah.
out, what's going on, but I mean what is being done about this?
Okay. So Cars decided during the pandemic, and I'm gonna pull um I'll put the name down here. Cars decided that during the pandemic that we could test this. And we had a series of sessions. How do we fight this? And a lot of the statute of limitations was over for some of the teachers have been out 10 years. So during our research, we found that we should reapply for our jobs. So for the people who had over 10 years that we could file a complaint, I told each and every one of them to reopen their job and be happy when they say you can't see Department of Education. So I have envelopes. I have boxes down here. That's what I reach. We try to get 50 complaints right now. We have 30. There are teachers who have complained and they said that they were mistreated, went to the U.S. Department of Justice, and we filed the lawsuit. We're sending our boxes out to Washington. Here is what the complaint looks like. Any documentation you have to prove whatever your case is. We're as a group, we did this on our own. We're going to the U.S. Department of Justice. That's why we need 50 complaints. And here's the thing: parents, community, retired teachers, especially anyone that was impacted by the school closings can join us. The more people we have, the more merrier. But we have been looking for people. I do say this: I ask that if you want to work for CPS and you want to sub, don't do it because they will go after you. They're very vicious, and I don't want to put anybody's job in jeopardy. But there are enough of us out here that don't want to work for CPS, and we want to say we want to complain and say we didn't deserve it. But I want to quickly get to my non-for-profit Teach for the Future Incorporated. We're the ones that do the scholarship for a student every year. Last year, we did a student at CVCA High School, and we gave her the Bridging the Gap Scholarship. We raised money for that. Cause Teachers is my advocacy group. Teach for the Future is my curriculum, 501c3. And I do grants and all kind of things under my curriculum, 501c3. Now, I do want to get to this. We have two petitions out. One, of course, is on the mass termination of African American teachers and expulsions. I'm talking real fast now. Expulsions for students. So what we have, our Black students are being expelled at an alarming rate. That's what Denise talked about. So our petition includes our students, and we want to look at the expulsion and suspension rate, and we want an investigation into that. So that's one petition, and it's on change.org. And I was trying to
And what's the name of it?
uh, investigate the mass termination of African American teachers on change.org, and that's under Coalition and Alliance of Urban School Educators. That's what CAUSE stands for: Coalition Alliance of Urban School Educators. That's the acronym CAUSE. So if you go on change.org and Google, you will also see our other petition that's going to pop up right because it's new: literacy for African American children. And let's quickly talk about that. We, during our years of working, because I got into this to teaching to help Black children and to see why they were struggling. One of the things I learned at Williams, because the children were struggling with the standardized test, and I would have to sit like you teach a subject, you know you taught it, but nobody knows it. When the standardized test comes, there's no cross reference over because the students are speaking two different languages. It's like Greek to them when they see the standardized test. They don't have a clue about what they're being asked. It's not that they don't know the answer, they can't access it. So I learned that when I was working at Williams. I would sit with my student and explain. And all of a sudden, I was getting the highest gain in reading. My scores were jumping up, and I was like, wow, I wonder what's going on. But I learned internally that if I could interpret the language and put the context in a language students could understand, they would succeed. So that's what I first thing I learned. Also, when I was at Williams, I was noticing that one day we had our church graduation. There were all these students screaming like somebody had died. And then we went out of our classroom, and this one student was trying to jump over the third story floor banister, and someone had to come and help her. Security had to be called, and I said, "Well, what happened?" The student had failed 3 times. She was going to be 16, and she couldn't get out of elementary school. And she was so devastated that someone had to hold her back from jumping over the banister. So I said, wow. So those things stuck in my mind. When I left CPS, I went to Mississippi to teach. And when I went to Mississippi, I had a group of Hispanic children and I had Black children. So when I was filling out the grades, they came in and they said, you know, you have to pass all the Hispanic. Make sure you give them at least a C, but we prefer that you give them an A or B. So I said, but A or B? And then they said, yeah. I said, they don't speak English. And she said, it doesn't matter. It's state law that they have to get a passing grade, and we prefer A's and B's. So she said, you have to change all their grades. So I began to erase all the grades. And when I got to the Black student, she said, no, wait a minute. You don't have to do that. He's Black, so you can fail him. And I looked at her like, did you hear what you just said? And so those things stuck with me. And when I began to work on my doctorate, I wanted to was that in 1998, and that's on my literacy petition, the Hispanics decided that they would pass ESL, English as a second language, and ELL, early language learners, and that resources would go into those programs. And here's what it does. It makes sure their children cannot fail. As you just said, you can't fail them even if they don't speak a word of English. They get additional literacy support in Spanish and English. So when they come out, they're fluent in both languages. And it also adjusts for the trauma that that little girl had when she learned she failed. Now, Jaquan is over here and Pedro is over here. Pedro is getting the double resources, the additional language support, everything. Can't fail him. He's not. He's gonna be 13 and he's going to high school and he's gonna not be held back. No matter if he speaks English or Spanish, but Jaquan is over here. And Jaquan has failed 3 times. And I learned that when I was teaching 7th grade, every year I was graduating a 7th grader out of 7th grade after going to 8th grade for one because they had aged out. They were going to be 16, and I'm just getting that right. That doesn't happen to the Hispanic child that's under ESL and ELL. So I did some research into looking at the bill, and I saw that all of the legislation that they passed was our civil rights legislation. Everything they used, the civil rights bills that we fought for, those are the reasons why they were able to pass that legislation. Now I went to California. This was in 1998. In 1996, what I saw was that in California, Ebonics was declared a second language. But people didn't like the word, so we'll say African American Vernacular English to make some people comfortable because our people don't like the word. But had we moved forward on the Ebonics agenda, our children would have gotten those resources in 1998. They would have been included as a second language. They would have had the same resources that the immigrant children had. So,
You know what, Denise?
Well,
We're gonna have to have her back.
Rosita, this is some profound
We're gonna have you back on.
information that you have given us. We're going to have to
We
have
got
you
to,
back on to
got to,
continue this. Absolutely,
yeah.
because
because
So
what's happening to
I'm
our
asking
this
everyone,
is terrible.
yeah,
this is
ask
criminal.
your
What's happening to our
legislators.
children?
Here's the solution quickly. All we have to do is call our legislators everywhere, sign my petition, and insist that African American be put in. They don't have to change the bill. All they have to do is add a line item that would include them. And
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, if you do this, you will see a beautiful transformation in literacy for our children. In 10 years, we will be rising like the Hispanic children are
It,
doing.
it's our bill anyway. We passed that civil rights bill. And
Mm-hmm.
as you said, they have taken what we have fought for and they
Exactly.
made it work for them. And our black elected officials are going along with it. So, yeah, we can say this is our bill. And if you need to amend it so our children can progress like these students, then you damn sure better do it. This is criminal.
It
Yes, it
is.
is.
This is
But
criminal
you
what
have
they're
to
doing to our children.
love. See, we've been in the classroom with our children and we believe in them and we know something is wrong. That's why I was constantly, look, something's wrong here. I'm looking
Well,
at children
Okay,
that are
well,
progressing.
give us the name of your petitions
oh,
It's
this makes
still under
this
again,
makes
cause
how people can
Coalition and
go.
Alliance of Urban School Educators. If you go on change.org and type in cause CAUO Coalition and Alliance of Urban School Educators, it will pop up literacy for ADOS children, American descendants of chattel slavery. Uh, those are for ADOS children. And we push. And this is, I mean, if I could get this done, I would be with educate. I mean, I know that having this happen is going to transform every black child's life in this country. That is low income. Now, here's the thing: a lot of people didn't like it, but this all the Hispanics are not in ESL or ELL. It's those who need it. We're talking about the
Mhm.
children. My target population are poor children. We're not talking about middle class black children who are stay 9-9. We're not going to give them those services. They don't need it. We're talking about the percentage of our children, over 60%, who are left behind and who cannot compete. They know they can't compete. They're out here realizing that crime is the only way for them. And we must, as adults, fight like hell to get our resources to our children in the same manner that everyone else is doing for theirs. So
and you
That's
know where
right. That's
they let
right.
those
And
Hispanics stay in that ESL language. They let them stay there for the very purpose that you just said. They learn English fluently and they know Spanish fluently. So it's a win-win for them when they are supposed to be transitioning them out once they learn the English.
and guess what? In some cases, they don't even test those children.
They
That's
don't.
why the data is so lopsided. I was working for a principal and she was hollering and screaming at the black children. And I said, but you know that they don't even test a large percentage of their population. We have to test all of our children.
Oh
And we have
my!
to test, so, and when
This
they say
is
African American,
this is sick.
because they're in that program, in many cases, there a lot of them were not even being tested.
Well,
So
we're
their
gonna have
data
okay, well,
in low schools weren't
to.
going there.
Rosita, this has been some profound information. We will have you back on our show again. I mean,
Thank you so much.
our parents need to know this. Our parents need to be more involved, and that's another reason why Black literacy is so important. Our people need to be reading and knowing what's going on and understanding what you're talking about. And so thank you. Thank you for the
And you
work
know what?
Thank you.
that you are doing, and thank you for coming on the show. And
Well,
I
thank
do
you
want
so
to
much.
mention at the end here, we, as I said earlier, we support our Black bookstores. And so we do, every month we have a Black bookstore on our website. And this month it is Rose Cafe. And she's not a brick and mortar, but it's rosecafe.org, or you can go to her website and purchase books from her. She's here in Roseland, here in Chicago. And then we select the book of the month, and the book of the month is The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. And so, in order to win this book, all you have to do is subscribe to rrgbc.org. And at the end of the month, we will announce the winner, and the winner will receive that book. We give some wonderful books away every
And
month.
and I'm
And
hoping
also,
you're going to
you
be
can
giving
go.
my book away in a couple of months. I have two books
Okay.
that are in publishing, and
And
one
also,
is called the Drinking from the Whites Only Fountain. It's a historical analysis of Black educators from 1600 to today. And the other one is called In the Year of 911 at Rainbow's End. And it's about what happened with Chicago organizing. And so those two books will be out. I'm praying to God they'll be out for Christmas.
Well, we
and
hope that you will be able to place your book in our local Black bookstores. That's one of the
Yes.
things that we were promoting at the at our event this weekend. Is that as we have
Mhm.
a lot of people writing, and we would like for you to definitely look at the Underground Bookstore, Frontline Bookstore, Rose Cafe. You know, we have a number, Duh Book Joint. We have a number of bookstores here on the south side, and then going out west and out north, you've got Semicolon and so forth, Chicago. So, I mean, we have a lot of bookstores that you could place your books in, and so our people need to get their hands on that book.
And
Okay?
also, Denise, we are a nonprofit organization.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
finance this organization by ourselves. So you can go to rrgbc.org and donate. And these are the
Absolutely.
kinds of programs that we bring to you. It's important that we stay independent so that we can talk about whatever we need to talk about that will
Right.
help our people. So go to
Okay.
rrgbc.org and donate. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank
Thank you.
you, Doris, and thank you, Rosita,
Thank
and
you.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you. God bless. Okay. Okay. And so we off. I'm trying to how to get off.